people should just get used to being more collaborative, because that's what it's like when you go in the real world. Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Kim. So this video is going to be the top 10 things that I wish I knew as a pre-med. Having graduated, there are definitely some things that I wished someone would have told me. Also, I'm a first generation student, so if you're a first generation student or you don't have anyone who has been through the med school process, I think it's always good to watch a video with advice about what people wish they would have done as pre-meds. I definitely wish I would have watched one of these videos before starting. Alright, so the first thing that I wish I would have known as a pre-med is that you don't have to major in something science related. So what I mean is like all the conventional science majors like biochem, chemistry, biology, like all those majors. Honestly, it really doesn't matter when it comes down to it, because to get into med school you have to take all the prerequisite classes, and those alone will suffice for your preparation for the MCAT and most likely for medical school, because let's be real, who really remembers everything you learn from all your classes? I don't even remember what I ate yesterday, so probably won't remember things that you learn in your very specific biochem only major classes. But yeah, for me, I wanted to be a math major because I freaking loved math in high school. It was my favorite subject. Calculus was my favorite thing ever. Derivatives made me horny AF. I'm just kidding about that one. But seriously, do something you love, and med schools will probably like the diversity anyways. So I was a poverty-sized minor, and med schools that I would interview at always asked about that because they were so much more interested in that than my neuroscience major. So I would actually just do what you enjoy doing and know that as long as you take all the prereqs, you'll be fine. And med schools will like you regardless, I promise. Okay, the second thing is really probably the biggest piece of advice I wish someone would have told me, but you seriously do not have to make life harder for yourself. Actually, just please don't make life harder for yourself. I came in and I was in honors chemistry class. I seriously thought that it would be like high school, where if you took honors courses, then it would look good on your transcript, it would look good for your application. But honestly, med schools do not care. My honors chem class did not show up in my transcript as an honors chem class. It just had a number difference for the course number. If I was a med school, I literally would not know the difference. And those chem classes were my worst grades in college because it was mostly for people who wanted to be chem majors. I really regret that because med schools did not care at all. As bad as it sounds, they just care about the grade and like what you get coming out of it, which is like the prerequisite amount of information. Along with that, don't think you have to double major or like minor in a bazillion, cajillion things. That's not a number. I would not worry about like double majoring or anything. Like, they honestly just don't care. Alright, so the third thing that I wish I would have known is that I wish someone would have told me to either buy or borrow MCAT books or even use the Kaplan MCAT quick sheets. I'll link that below. I linked in my MCAT video if you guys haven't checked that out. But basically, before you start a class like organic chemistry or biochem, look through the bolded terms in the book or the quick sheets and just like prime your brain. Like, you don't even have to review or anything. And then when you're in the actual class, you'll be primed. And when the professor teaches you about one of those things that you happen to see in the quick sheets or the MCAT books that you borrowed from a friend, then your brain's gonna be like, oh, this is important, I should pay attention. It just saves you so much time, and it honestly forces you to learn that specific topic better because you know it's gonna be important in the long run. Okay, so what number am I on? I literally lost count. Hold up. Okay, I'm on the fourth tip. Oh my god, that's so embarrassing. How do I lose count after 4? It's like I don't know how to count. My fourth tip would be to read books for fun. CARS is 1/4 of your MCAT score, and no one told me that No one told me it would be a pain in the butt to do well in cars and to practice cars. If you read books throughout college or even read a lot of articles or magazines for fun, I think it would really benefit you for the cars section, which is the reading comprehension section of the MCAT. I think it'll just do you a lot of good in the long run, and then you won't have a headache and you won't cry about sucking at cars like I did for the whole month after I took my first MCAT. Alright, so my fifth thing that I wish I would have known as a pre-med, to not prioritize your school name. Don't let it get to your head. If you come from like a top 30 school or top 20 school, don't get cocky. Your school name is not as important as other things like your grade, your MCAT score, your extracurriculars, letters of recs, all of those things. I feel like your school name is a very minor facet of what the schools actually hone in on. So a lot of people kind of let that get to their head, and they probably didn't do as well in school because they thought that their school name would get them in. So I would not recommend letting that get to your head, because it won't be good for you in the long run, and med schools will not care as much as you think they do. And on the flip side, if you go to a non-prestigious school, I mean, all schools are great and you're going to learn all the core knowledge regardless, but if you do go to one of those schools where it might not be as prestigious, don't let that get to your head either. Like, I also had a lot of friends who stayed in the state schools and they felt like they weren't competitive enough because of where they came from. Honestly, if you have the stats for it, that will speak a ton to these med school deans and the people who are in charge of admissions. Alright, so my sixth piece of advice is that it is 100% okay to take a gap year. So I grew up in a culture where it's pretty frowned upon to take a gap year. As an Asian American, all my parents, relatives, and everyone in the Asian community, they literally told me, don't take a gap year. You're gonna forget all your knowledge. Probably thought people were dumb for taking gap years and that they were not good enough to get in. But honestly, I took a gap year and I thought it was a great year. I learned so much, and I finally got to take a break after undergrad, which is totally necessary coming out of Notre Dame. I feel like I have a better mindset going into med school. So I think it's 100% okay if you want to take a gap year. Yeah, just don't feel ashamed of it or anything. I think in my school, more than half the kids in my class that wanted to go to med school took a gap year, at least one gap year. It's pretty normal, actually. I think it was more abnormal to see someone come straight from college, like during the interviews, for me at least. So I would not recommend checking boxes. If you don't know what I mean by this, usually pre-meds think, oh, I have to check all the boxes of like doing research. I definitely have to do research. I definitely have to do clinical hours. I have to job shadow. I have to volunteer and do service. I think that you should do what you want to do. It is always good to have those things, but you don't have to consistently only do those things. Med schools are definitely attracted to people who do diverse experiences and have diverse things on their applications. For me, I did a lot of cultural clubs, I did calligraphy club, and I found that med schools asked a lot more about those specific clubs than the normal things that pre-meds usually do, such as service and research. I always prepped so much and like went back to all the research I did just to make sure if they asked me about research, then I would be 100% prepared. But I don't think a lot of the med schools I interviewed at asked me a lot about research. So, and along the same lines, definitely don't hop around. Like, it kind of fits in with checking boxes, but some people check boxes so much and they're so gung-ho about it that they'll just hop around, like do research 1 year, service another year, job shadow another year in college. Med schools like to see that you're passionate about something because they want to know that you can be passionate about something, like medicine. So if you enjoy one thing, like say you really enjoyed research freshman year, be consistent with that and do research all 4 years. If you don't like it, then it's okay to quit. But just have one thing at least that shows that you've been consistent for at least like 3 or 4 years. For me, I started cultural clubs since freshman year and I did it all throughout college. So I think that was a big plus for my application too, just showing that I was passionate and consistent about something and not just checking all the boxes and doing something for a month and then quitting, doing something else for a month, quitting, and then doing something else just for my resume. Alright, so the 7th thing that I recommend for pre-med is to have a support system. I think I ended up having a great support system, so it's not something I lacked during my pre-med years, but it's something that I didn't go in with the mentality of. And looking back on my pre-med experience, it was so important to have those people that you could feel that you could come to for advice, support, and having the support of your family and friends back home. That's also really important. Your pre-med years are going to be pretty stressful enough, so I think that having a support system is super important to keep you going and keep you grounded. Oh, also, I heard that med school is very collaborative, and I know a lot of friends that didn't go to Notre Dame said that they had a very cutthroat experience in their environments. So I think that people should just get used to being more collaborative, because that's what it's like when you go in the real world, especially in the med system. Okay, so my 9th tip for pre-meds is that you will fail at something. So yeah, you'll fail at something, and that's okay. And I wish someone would have told me that it is okay. Odds are you're probably going to end up failing something. You're probably going to end up either failing an exam, an assignment, or a project, or maybe even get rejected to one of research jobs that you applied to in the summer. You're going to fail at something. You're going to hit rejection unless you are perfect. In that case, you're probably failing at your social life. So hey, you're still failing at something. When I did my med school interviews, the physicians would ask me about a time where I failed at something during my undergraduate career and how I grew from that. So if you didn't fail at something and you're just sitting there and telling that interviewer, yeah, I didn't really fail anything, then yeah, I don't think it's gonna go so well for you. That physician's probably gonna think you're a robot. The last thing I wish I would have known as a pre-med is that I should never stop believing in myself and that anyone can get into med school. I know this is so cliche, but after downloading TikTok and seeing all these people post about their stats and like how hard they work to finally get into med school, it just hit me that it was never the end of the world if I did bad on an exam or if I did bad in a class, like relatively pre-med. But honestly, I think that anyone can do it. Like, don't stop believing in yourself. Med schools will see your perseverance for sure. If you don't stop believing in yourself, and if you have the heart to go into medicine, and if you're that dedicated to go into medicine, which requires so much dedication, then I think that you will get into med school eventually. So if it's what you really want to do, then you should just do it. Okay, so that wraps up the video of the top 10 things I wish I would have known as a pre-med. I guess it became more of an advice video rather than the top 10 things I wish I knew as a pre-med, but nevertheless, there are things I wish I would have known at least coming in and prioritizing more. I hope this was helpful in some way or another. Please hit the subscribe button if you want to see more and if you want to continue my journey to med school. I'll try to post vlogs if I can once I start med school in a couple weeks. I'm really scared, so the support would be nice.